Oke, baik Bapak Ibu, berhubung ini sudah jam 10 tepat, kita mulai acaranya supaya on time. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu yang sudah join untuk sesi customer webinar kali ini dengan topik yang akan kita coba share hari ini adalah mengenai perlindungan database dengan Imperva. Yang sebelumnya mungkin Bapak, Ibu-Ibu sudah pernah mendengar solusi Imperva, utamanya adalah di WAF ya, Web Application Firewall. Namun sebenarnya Imperva juga memiliki solusi lain yang cukup bagus dan cukup familiar adalah database security. Nah, pada pagi hari ini nanti akan dilakukan oleh Kengwa dan Brian dari Imperva Principal. Kemudian untuk acara ini terselenggara berkat kerjasama antara MII dengan MTech dan juga dari Prinsipal Imperva. Perkenalkan, saya sendiri Anto dari tim produk MII. Terima kasih sebelumnya sekali lagi kepada Bapak Ibu yang sudah join di acara ini. Nanti mohon bisa stay tune sampai akhir acara karena di akhir acara akan ada quiz yang dengan hadiahnya cukup lumayan untuk bisa shopping. Jadi mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu yang dapat ya. Dan nanti kalau jika ada pertanyaan bisa melalui chat atau bisa interrupt di middle sesi pada saat Kenghua presentasi atau bisa melalui raise hand ya kalau memang ini Bapak Ibu ada pertanyaan. Mungkin itu sedikit pembukaan dari saya. Morning Kenghua, maybe you can prepare your presentations.
Okay.
Sambil menunggu, mohon Bapak Ibu yang belum ada pertanyaan, mohon bisa untuk mute ya supaya.
Mana garis kertasnya?
Terima kasih. Okay, Kenghua, I think I will pass to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
you all see my slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi ya. So today, thank you MII for organizing this webinar. And Brian and myself will hope to share with you some of the exciting things that Imperva has and will also be having. Right, okay, without further ado, let me start the presentation. Okay, so in Imperva, we believe that data is our modern day crown jewel, and those who know Imperva, we always stress this, and it is because all organizations uses data with different type of use data for different experience. So some of you will use it for analyzing your customer, right? The data profiling your customers. Some will use it for business advancement, right? How this data will help you to sell more, right? For example, e-commerce company, right? This data will tell you, the profile of customers and what do they really like to buy, and from there you will evolve your promotion around this customer base. So these are one of the important things about data. Now, number two, it's about the customer's assets, right? They are information that keeps with us with an organization, the credit card information or their national ID information, their address, their mobile phone. These are all important data that you want to keep and to make sure that they are safe. So therefore, data therefore becomes a very important jewel in any organization. And on top of all this, right, we have now regulatory requirement, right? The laws require that you protect the data, make sure they are not leaked, right, etc. and etc. And I think there's no need for me to go into those news because you do hear them, read them every now and then. But the most impactful to me in the recent time was British Airlines, right? They were their data breach cost them a lot of money, payment in terms of penalty to the regulators. All right, so that's all I want to say for this slide. So why is the data the crown jewel? Because there are many paths to this data, which is right at the right hand side of this slide, right? First, you have the outsiders, people that can access this data via your internet, right? It could be through a internet e-platform, right? Your e-commerce platform, your e-banking platform, etc. Right? They somehow once if they are not legitimate user, they are the hackers. If they find a way in, they are also going for the data. And within your network, right, there are services like APIs, microservices that may not 100% be from your organizations, as in they are not built within, or and they are being used because um, I saw an error. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Because there was an error saying my connectivity is bad. Okay, anyway, so back to this microservices APIs, they are not usually not within your organizations, and they are used because they are available by your application teams, your development teams as part of the um, application or the services that they use, right? And all these are also accessing your data. And if any of these services are compromised or have a leak or has a badly written codes, your data get compromised. Then on the right hand side, right, the insider threat, right, we have our internal staff, working people with us, the contractors, the internal users. Sometimes they get careless, they click on some email phishing link, and then their machines get compromised, and that's how also the data get compromised. So as you can see in this slide, right, there are many ways that people can reach this data. Both good and the bad people can access. So if good is good for the business, but if the intent is bad, therefore this data will be easily compromised. So in Imperva, we believe that it is very important to protect all paths to the data. And this is our tagline ever since beginning of this year. Okay, protecting your data and all paths to it. And therefore, we have a full suite of solution that addresses this protection. Today, primarily, we will be talking on the right-hand side, right? Data risk analytic, database, firewall, protecting the data that's within the internal network. But we do have other solutions that are in the cloud, that are on-prem, that are host space to protect the paths that goes to the data. Um, those that you see in blue very quickly are something that we have two of the items like cloud site protection and cloud data security. These are in-house developed, and very recently, just about last week, we announced the acquisition of this company called JSONA that will enhance our data security offering with visibility into your data and application. Okay, so JSONA in short is a modern data security, compliance, and privacy company that helps that can be used on virtually any type of data store. So it just shows you, right? If you choose Imperva as your technology partner into your business, protecting your data, we are not a company that just sit there and wait for other things to happen. You see us progressing and upgrading and improving our technology, even in acquisition. So with this, I'm going to leave Brian to share with you the focus of this today's webinar, which is the the data protection. All right, Brian, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, Kenghua. Let me share my screen. Yeah. Can you all see my screen? Just to be
Yes,
sure.
we can
Okay.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, morning everyone. My name is Brian. I'm the pre-sales consultant that is based out of Singapore, helping Kenghua to cover Indonesia and some other countries in the region. So, to follow up on what Kenghua has mentioned, data definitely is a lifeline to many companies these days. Okay, whether you agree or not, but data definitely becomes more important than many of other assets that company are owning these days, because data can drive innovation, data can drive growth, and data can drive other aspect of the business, even in the area of intellectual property. It doesn't even covers for Imperva itself. In fact, every single organizations are facing that problem. And that's the reason why I included some news article that actually highlights some of the unfortunate news that probably you have seen that happens in Indonesia itself. So previously, what many people assume is data breach or compromise rarely happens in my area. Well, these days it's not really true. Data breach is getting more common. Data breach is getting more closer to home. Okay, because of a simple reason, I need to get hold of data so that I can profit, I can make money out of it. And that's the reason why many companies are struggling to ensure that they are able to properly have insight into where are my data, who are using them, and whether there's potentially any leakage of those data out, which will indirectly put me in the news article. And that's the unfortunate part, because when you talk about data breach, when it happens, okay, other than the newspaper come out, okay, branding gets affected, okay, the other part is about the cost. Based on last year research itself, the average cost of the data breach is about 3.86 million. This number is increasing almost every single year. Very simple, because the amount of data every company is holding is getting more, okay, and that's the reason why the regulators is coming down very hard in terms to company when giving out penalties or etc. So penalty might be just one small aspect of the issue that could be facing, because the other major aspect is the reputation. Brand reputation being damaged is definitely is a bad thing for a company, because it affects their survival, and indirectly it also benefits your competitor. Okay, loss of customers and revenues definitely will come hand in hand, because when something happen, when bad news happen, customer will lose confidence. You'll go to your competitor, whether is it e-commerce or other aspect. I'll buy things from there, because I no longer have trust that you are able to properly secure the data that I have with you. So when I talk about data, it could be things like first name, last name. It could be even things like credit card numbers. All these things become personal data that every company these days need to properly secure. But the biggest question is on a lot of customer mind is that why database security is so difficult? Why is it so challenging for everyone to have a proper control or proper management of my database security? A few reasons comes into the picture. Okay, for those that actually have or understand about managing data within a database itself, there are a few areas where commonly what we hear from customer. Start from the left. Okay, given that the amount of data is growing at a exponential rate, or I call it a ridiculous rate, the amount of data every company is collecting or using is just growing on a daily basis. Okay, and that becomes a problem. Okay, I do not know where are my data. Okay, because this department might copy a set of data for them to use for their own mining or for their own research. So now there's a set of data being copied and moved to another place. So all this movement of data just create a problem. I do not know where they are. So this is just about talking about data. Okay, I have not moved on to talk about the category of sensitive data. Okay, because there are two types of data, two buckets. Okay, one is a non-sensitive data, one is a sensitive data. Okay, sensitive data, as I mentioned, are things that are critical, okay, or important to user. Credit card information, my birth date, my first name, last name, my national ID, etc. Okay, non-sensitive data could be other aspects. It could be like maybe your preference or etc. So all these things becomes a problem if I don't even know where my sensitive data. I can't even talk about protecting them or even monitoring them, because if I do not know where are my data, I can't even talk about protection. Okay, and even when they are breached, I would not know. So all these are kind of related, because if I do not know where are my data, especially sensitive data, I do not know where they are.
Ya, hati-hati.
I do not know whether they are breached or not. I do not even have ability to react to it. The other part is user. Okay, let's be honest. User is always the biggest problem since day one. Okay, either they are careless, okay, they are compromised, okay, or they are intentionally malicious. Why? Careless, especially in COVID-19 situation. I want to make my job easier. What do? I just upload my file anywhere so that I can easily get hold of them and do my work. My objective is just to do my work. I don't care about security at all. But when I do that, it just means that my data are now easily exposed to everywhere. Okay, so simple case, I can just upload my Word document to an online PDF generator, generate into PDF file. Oh, my job done. But do you realize that that company is now holding a set of your data? Okay, so that's the reason why. Okay, careless user are also one of the biggest problem. Compromised user also, in the current context of COVID-19, everybody working from home. Okay, now what happened? Home security is always not at that level where corporate has. So workstation now become a risk point, because the workstation allows them to work on those data, allows them to connect back to the office, get hold of data, etc. So that is a problem itself, followed by malicious, where for whatever reason, maybe that guy just want to steal data and then sell it out to some other competitor so as to gain some monetary rewards. Okay, and the last part, lack of skilled professional. Almost everybody is talking about it. Overwhelmed, understaffed, yet I have more security device to manage. How do I even make sense of all those events that are coming out from the console, so that I know that there's actually a risk and a threat that's happening in my environment? Okay, that is the complexity that many organizations these days are facing with regards to managing data as a whole. Okay, and not to mention, externally, I still have to answer to my auditor, to regulation. Okay, you might see that, oh, over here some not really applies to me, true and not true. Okay, especially for GDPR. GDPR now is like cut across the group. It doesn't mean that GDPR only applies to Europe. Okay, anytime you're storing data that belongs to European citizens, you have the need to make sure that those are secure. And we also heard from the news that Indonesia is also looking into some form of data protection law, which is pretty common. I mean, not only Indonesia. Indonesia is not alone. Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, almost like every single one is going down this path to ensure that when company collects data from end user, they are hold responsible and be liable for those data that's in their hand. Okay, in their words, it could be like a data controller, okay, or it could be a data processor. They can't outsource all this responsibility. Even if they were to host it in the cloud, it doesn't mean that they can outsource it and not become my problem. Indirectly, they are still whole responsible for it. So what we are seeing a trend is, internally, I have a problem. Okay, I do not even know how to start with managing data, because I don't know where they are. I need to talk about user. I need to talk about the other aspect of my staff, okay, whether they are well trained, equipped, or even understaffed, overloaded. Externally, regulations, audit, okay, all these things are just adding on to the challenges of a lot of customers. And it's common to hear where people always grumble, especially business user. Okay, they always say that lags is kind of like hold back. Okay, security is like a roadblock. Okay, it's like always holding back the business transformation. or digital transformation, where is the buzzword that you are hearing these days. Oh, my company need to digital transformation to catch up with the business climate. But all these security challenges, compliance are just holding back the business process in terms of digital transformation itself. Yeah. So we fully understand and hear what customers are saying. We fully resonate with the challenges. And that's the reason why we believe that security can definitely coexist with whatever business transformation that the organization is going through. It's definitely not a case where it's a roadblock. Okay, business security can definitely be a business enabler. Okay, to help the company grow and yet doesn't overcome or doesn't hold back in terms of the transformation process. Okay, so how do we do that? To start off,
Brian,
hey,
sorry to cut you. I do aware that one of the user here in CCS Imperva raised hand 2 times. Maybe he wanna ask something.
Iya, Pak Agus, silakan. Mic-nya dinyalakan.
Is he speaking or typing? Let me see.
Pak Agus Gunawan ya. Mau ada yang ditanyakan, Pak? Oh, maybe you just okay. Maybe you can continue, Brian. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. I mean, if let's say he want to ask later, I mean, just stop me, let me know. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Okay. So just to continue to what I was briefly covering, from Imperva perspective, to address the challenges and the roadblocks or concern that we mentioned just now, there are a few areas that you can start with. Okay. First and foremost is about visibility. Okay, as I mentioned just now, you cannot protect what you do not know. Very simple. If I do not know where are my data, where are my sensitive data, how do I even talk about monitoring and protection? I can't. Okay, even whatever policy that you have defined might not make sense at all. It's because I need to know where are my data. Very simple. Okay, next, once I know where are my data, at least I can define some form of monitoring and protection around it so that I can stay secure, compliant. Okay, very simple. Once I know, I can put some policy to eyeball by putting CCTV on it to know who are accessing those data, what are they doing to it, okay, at what time, okay, answering the who, what, where, when, how, okay, the common questions. And last but not least, helping your staff to be more productive, in short. Because these days, as I mentioned, managing security solution is not an easy process. We are facing a challenge where people are complaining about alert fatigue. I do not know which one I should react on, or are they false alarm? I need to give them ability to act more smarter. And even Forrester kind of agree that business, as they become more digital, okay, we need to be more data centric. And that's the reason why this process around visibility, compliance, secure, and followed by staff equipping is helping this process to be more data centric. Okay, ultimately in the end it's about helping you, okay, to answer critical questions about where my data, who access it, sensitive data, who access it, and what. Okay, so this is the important part that we are talking about. Okay, that we are helping customer to address all those challenges itself. Okay, so how do we actually do that is very simple. Okay, we actually helps you to start off by doing a data discovery, classification, and assessment. By now you should kind of like understand where I'm coming from. Okay, as I started off by saying that, you know, a lot of customers doesn't know where are their data. Okay, data or sensitive data as a whole. So that's the reason why we are helping customer to first do a discovery to find out, hey, where are my data? Specifically, where are the data within those databases? Why is that important? These days, it's so easy to set up a database in an environment. Okay, sometimes customer might not even know that they have rogue instances or unknown instances of database in the environment. Why is that so? Okay, when I talk about developers itself, not saying that they are bad guys, okay, but developers interact with data regularly because they need to work with application, they need to ensure that the application works well with those data, okay. Then how do I get hold of this data to test my application? Technically, I can go and create a set of dummy data or fake data, but it takes a lot of work. So kind of like a shortcut, okay. Why don't I just go and copy the production data into this database and testing? So some of these challenges exist, okay. So it's not saying that they are malicious. It's kind of like a careless group of user, okay, because they don't really care about security. And that's the reason when we do a sweep of my environment, I give customer the insight of understanding where are those data within those databases. Or in short, where are my databases? Where are those holding data? And very important, I need to know whether they are sensitive or not. Okay. And last but not least, I can access those databases to see whether they are vulnerable to threats or not. So this is the part. Even as a normal user and on board on a data protection or data security journey, this is an important part that I need to onboard on. And just a quick intro. Are you able to see my console?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So this is the Imperva dashboard itself. Okay. This is a demo environment that's running on my laptop. If it's a little bit slow, pardon it, because my laptop is now under stress. I do not have a really high-end laptop itself. So sometimes a little bit slow. So this is a quick illustration. What we can do within the system is, even as part of the illustration over here, we start off by doing a discovery and classification scan. What it means is within the appliance itself, we are able to configure scans such that I do a sweep of a particular subnet or a zone to understand, hey, whether in this particular zone itself, is there any web services or is there any database services? And when I talk about database services, it doesn't mean that we only cover the Microsoft SQL. We also can cover other database services like Oracle, DB2, for example. So in this illustration, of course, I only have a one machine in my environment. So when I do a scan, that's where I pick up that, hey, this particular all-in-one server, right, is running both a web service as well as a SQL service. I mean, as most database administrator will know that 1433 commonly are associated with Microsoft SQL, okay? And of course, we also try to identify the OS itself, okay, and whether there are any database user that has been discovered within the environment. Okay, so this is at least the starting part. Okay, I discover where are my assets. Of course, if let's say you have this magical Excel document that you always like to maintain, or most users like to maintain, right, then they can do a comparison. But many a times, right, a lot of customers will say that, hey, how come my Excel document, the magic inventory, right, doesn't match with your scan? Well, because there could be unknown database that has been set up without your knowledge. As I mentioned, these days with powerful computing devices available to everyone, I can just spin up a database instance via virtualization to have all these database service in there to do my own testing. Okay, so this is at least the first step. I help you to discover. The other part is we can do a classification scan, where we help you to discover next step within those database, okay, and those data within there, are there any sensitive information that you should be concerned about? Okay, so within the scan itself, the dictionary, we have the ability, or we already provide some of the default template based on national ID, based on credit card information, email addresses, first name, last name. Okay, we have quite an extensive dictionary that's provided. Okay, but if let's say that is not sufficient, we can still allow you to tailor-make or to customize your own set of dictionary or scan based on regular expression. Then we can do a scan to pick up additional thing. Why is that important? For example, national ID. Every country is very unique. Indonesia has its own set of national ID. Singapore also has its own set. Malaysia has its own set. So within our environment or within our template, we might not have the ability to pick up Indonesian national ID or national Indonesia driving license itself. But we give it the flexibility to do a custom regular expression to pick it up, so that I know that, hey, this database is holding a national ID information itself. So this at least covers the initial part of discovery the server, followed by classification of the data within it. I do not have an example of a scan of the database vulnerability, but in short, it's like a regular vulnerability scanner that you are very familiar with. It's like Rapid7 or this to scan the server, but we're only focusing on database vulnerability because database, like all other software, has its own set of vulnerability. We just want to let the DBA or the security team have a basic understanding of whether your system is secure or it is lacking certain patches that you should be deploying. So these are the 3 key areas that we are helping customer to focus on as a starting point. Okay, so once I know where are my data or where are my databases itself, okay, I can move on to do some form of monitoring. Okay, monitoring is also built within our system itself, and that's the reason why Kenghua was saying that, hey, our system, okay, common name is what we call as a database activity monitoring. Okay, we are monitoring data that resides in a database and the in and out, and who are tampering and monitoring, updating, editing them. That is the main essence. Okay, we also can do some form of observation in terms of real-time alerting. Okay, which is very important. Why is that so? In case you are not aware, okay, in terms of database activity monitoring, that it falls into 2 different areas. Okay, on one hand, we give you insight and visibility into who is accessing those data. Very important. Okay, when I have those visibility, okay, I can at least generate into PDF report, Excel document to send it to my auditor and ask them to not disturb me because I have everything in control. I know who is touching them, what is being done to them. Okay, but the other camp, okay, or the other security team say that, well, rather than reactive, where after 1 month then I generate a report, then I realize that something is not right, I also want some form of real-time detection, okay, such that if, for example, DBA is accessing the database at weird hour, maybe in the middle of the night, okay, I want to flag up an alert and notify my SOC, or if let's say someone is pulling too many records from the database, which is not common. Normally, database user pulling records is always in the range of about hundreds or thousands. But if let's say suddenly the DBA has a change in behavior and started to pull millions of records, then something is not right. Either the machine could be compromised, the account has been compromised, or the user has turned malicious itself. That I want to be in real time. And that's the reason we allow the flexibility for customer to define different type of policy out of the box. Okay, they can either define audit policy just to capture, generate reports, or they can have another form where they can define a policy and then do alerting in near real times. And the nice thing is we try to provide as much templates out of the box, okay, for customer to easily deploy the solution itself, so that the time to value, the time to deployment is shortened as much as possible. What do I mean by that? So over here, you'll see that there are 2 different types of policy. One is security, one is data policy itself. Okay, security policy itself encompasses a couple of policies that have the ability to flag up, okay, in case of any malicious activity that has been discovered. So let me jump to the last one. Okay, so over here, you see that we have a few default policy out of the box that can either serve compliance reason like PCI, okay, HIPAA. I know that HIPAA doesn't really apply in our vision, but PCI, if let's say you are financial organizations, you might want to look into this area. We also have GDPR, as I mentioned, or even simple things like field login attempts. Okay, how you define the policy is very simple, based on match criteria. What kind of events I'm looking at, okay, what kind of exceptions, the occurrence, etc. These are just the criteria. Once the criteria has been matched, I can either do an alert or a block if you want, but normally not a lot of people want to do a blocking itself because that could have a disruption. We can even notify as a follow-up action, okay, to say that I notified the SOC if I want, okay. This is customizable as well, severity in terms of high, medium, and low. So I can define this as a match criteria so that when, okay, I have failed login attempts to my database itself, okay, that happens 5 times within 43,200 seconds, okay, from the same source, okay, I want to be notified because that could be a brute force attempt itself. Okay, so this is just one example. Okay, I can define a condition based on my need. Yeah, so the other part is, for example, HIPAA. For example, I can look at command groups, whether there's any commands that's been issued to the database to do backup operations. Okay, backup, why is it a concern? It depends on both ways, because if let's say I'm doing a backup for a legitimate reason, yeah, fine, because I want to ensure that I have a copy to restore in the case of a disaster happen, or when nowadays pretty common ransomware happens, okay, I have a way to backup and restore. But it also can serve as a dangerous mean where after I do a backup, I can sell the set of data to someone else. So at least I have the insight and understanding that, hey, someone is doing a backup. Is it legit or not legit? Okay. So that is the security policy. Okay. We also have the audit policy. As you can see from the screenshot I'm going to show, okay, for example, the match criteria is almost very similar. So you see, we are making attempts to make sure that the learning curve of the UI is as low as possible. So that in this context, okay, when I were to define a policy, whether is it security policy or audit policy, the concept is the same. I define what is the match criteria, okay. I can add any other extensive or any other condition to add on top of it, and then I just do apply to the object that I want, and immediately I can do the auditing. So you can see the difference over here is audit policy and security policy is that audit policy doesn't have a severity, it doesn't have a response mechanism to say I notified the SOC, for example, or to send an email. I don't have. Audit policy, the main chunk of the purpose is to capture, generate a report, and send it to the external party to say that this is what I've done to make sure that I have visibility into my data access and I am in compliance. These are my evidence. Okay, so this is the policy that we are defining within the console itself. Okay, to start off, okay, after I know where are my data, where are my databases. Okay, so this is a snapshot, and after that we can move on to do real-time monitoring. Monitoring in terms of, as I mentioned, whether any access to those data are they legitimate or not, and these are real-time notifications. This can be seen within our console, give you complete insight into all those access down to application, what application they are using to access the database itself. Because sometimes many organizations have only a set of application that they allow to access the database. It could be from the vendor itself. For instance, Microsoft, we call it Microsoft SQL Studio. Okay, I cannot allow third-party application like Toad or even DB Visualizer. I don't allow them. So the moment anyone use them, I want to flag it up. Same thing. We also capture the user. Okay, and what are they doing to those database, okay, when they access it. That's the beauty part. We give you end-to-end information so that you are able to react to those events itself based on the information that I'm capturing. From audit perspective, same thing. We also capture the event data, the source IP, the user, destination, same concept, application and query itself. So we are able to capture all this stuff within our console. So what do I mean by that? Okay, firstly, when I talk about alerting, okay, we can show you over here that within the same dashboard, we can capture things about, okay, what has been done to the database. So for this particular example, excessive attempts of database login, we will capture any abnormal behavior that's been flagged up. For this particular instance, okay, it's happening for Oracle Solaris database. The user is Solaris ERES. There are several attempts, okay. and all are flagged up with Oracle error message of invalid username and password. Okay, log on denied. Okay, so from here we show you the details about the timestamp, okay, the Oracle object itself that we have created within the system, the service, source and destination, okay, what is the username, what is the application that has been used to access the database, and if possible, we try to capture the OS, user, and the host name as well. And what is the error message that has been thrown back by the database, okay, to highlight that, hey, this particular access has been denied. So from here, we give you complete visibility into what has actually happened, so that at least I can have a starting point to do my analysis, and if needed, I can do my response as well. If let's say I realize that, hey, something is not right, okay, ERAS shouldn't be accessing or been having all these field login attempt. He's not a person that easily forgets his password. So we need to know what actually happens. I better give him a call. So this is the real-time alerting that we are talking about. The other part is about the database audit itself. Database audit, as I mentioned, is where I have the ability to just capture and then flag it up on what are the particular incident that has been captured itself. Okay, so these are data that are stored within the system, and we will show it up after it's pulling out. Okay, as I mentioned, my laptop is a little bit slow. So over here, same thing, we will show you the timestamp. Okay, what is the user that has been seen to be accessing the database, the source and destination, which database is hitting, the application, and the select statement itself. All these are seen here. So over here, for example, I can just pull in one particular rows, okay, to get more insight if I want. Okay, so this is about getting the raw logs out of the gateway itself, so that at least I can investigate. Okay, so same thing, the timestamp, the event ID, source destination, the service ID. Okay, what is the login activity? It was a login. SQL exception occur. Was there a failure in login? For this case, no, it was false. Okay, if it's true, then I want to know what actually happens. So this is login activity. That's why there's no subsequent things like, oh, is there any response size or affected rows? Because I'm not pulling out any data itself. Okay. How about this one, for example? I can pull information out. You see, since this is a select statement, okay. So over here, okay, I'm seeing a case where 29th of September, okay, SAP ID 6 is doing a connection, okay, and it's doing a select statement, okay, of this particular object using this query. So you see, these are really complete pictures that we are able to capture on down to the single SQL query statement that's been sent to the database itself, okay. And for those DBA that's on this call, right, okay, the nice part about our solution is we do not require you to enable native auditing on your database. We do not, okay? We do not need you to turn on native auditing or Oracle, SQL, or Informix or whatever, no, okay? Our solution is able to function on its own through a combination of appliances and agent itself. So, because we know that most of our DBA don't really like to turn on native auditing due to challenges of the going down this path because it will affect the performance of the DB. So our solution works independently. We do not need you to turn on native auditing. And yet we have the ability to capture all these SQL statements, okay, whether it is crossing in the network or is it done locally within the system itself. So when I say locally within the system itself, it's like I physically do a SSH or remote desktop, or I'm walking up to the server itself in the data center to do a control alternate delete to log into the database to do all those transaction or queries. Our system has the ability to capture everything that's happening on the network or the wire or even on the physical host itself. That is the beauty part, okay? And all these are done without any native auditing to be enabled, okay? So this is the part about the visibility that we are helping customer to cover, okay? And end-to-end, firstly to discover the database, followed by the data, move on to helping you to stay secure and compliant by defining policies, to look after all these critical assets, okay? Either achieving real-time alerting, monitoring, or having the ability to just capture all those SQL statements, okay, and then generate as a report to submit to your auditor or your regulator, okay? This is the part. But we also hear customers saying that, hey, although your solution is good, okay, you give me the insight and the visibility, but I still have a problem. Why? Because there are just too many events coming in. I mean, to be very candid, okay, let me show you my dashboard again. This default rule that I have, okay, that I kind of like running the events for the last couple of maybe for only a few hours, I'm already generating about 7 million events. Okay, 7 million events, technically speaking, is kind of challenging for anyone to kind of or figure out whether this is a legitimate access, this is not a legitimate access, this is malicious intent or non-malicious intent. There are too many questions to be addressed within the events itself. Yeah, I can also define real-time alerting, okay, but real-time alerting also have its own constraint. It only works based on the criteria that I define. If I miss out a criteria or I overlook certain things, or it just didn't hit my criteria, then I'll miss the event itself. So there are too many variables. So that's why a lot of customers say that, hey, Imperva, do you have a way that can help me to reduce false positive and yet has the ability to identify any potential change in user behavior that I should be aware of, especially now in the context of COVID-19. Everybody is working from home. I do not know what is their behavior, or is there any change? Are they accessing those data that they're supposed to? So that's the reason why we came up with a different solution called a data risk analytics to complement. Okay, I want to add is to complement what database activity monitoring can offer. Okay, so database activity monitoring can capture the logs. Okay, now with data risk analytics, we help you to make better sense of what is actually happening within the environment itself. Don't worry, we are not asking you to define another set of rules, another set of conditions. No. Why? Because data risk analytics, as the name goes, okay, we are using machine learning algorithm. There's nothing, perpetually there's nothing for you to define. Okay, what we actually done is what database activity monitoring has captured, we just move that set of information to data risk analytics for it to digest and then make sense out of it, so as to see whether there's any other things that you should be focusing on, okay, based on priority rather than being overwhelmed by alerts and events itself. That is the beauty part. Now, instead of scrambling and figure out every single event that is coming in, with data risk analytics, what we have done is we digest the information and then break it up into human readable language and lingo for you to understand. If you remember just now, I was sharing this, right? Okay, this particular part, okay, about audit events or SQL queries itself. To be very frank, okay, not many security folks, I mean, including myself, I mean, I'm very honest, can understand every single SQL query that has been sent to the database. Okay, for example, if you were to ask me to look at this, okay, and then ask me to explain to you what I have actually been done, to be very frank, I do not have a very clear answer for you. Okay, because all these SQL queries are jargons that not many people can especially appreciate, especially security folks. Okay, security folks, most of them are well trained in port scanning, malware, or any other things. When I talk about database security, it's like, oh man, what is that? Okay, what is select? I can go and Google. Then next, I see an insert. Oh, what is insert? What is delete? I'll be Googling, trying to find out what actually all this context is about. But with data risk analytics, okay, what we have actually done is we make it easier. Same thing, I have a data risk analytics demo environment over here. Okay, this is another dashboard, okay, that we are helping customers to have an easier life to address data security itself. What it means is, after I consume the events, okay, from my database activity monitoring, then I'll break it down into severity for issues itself. So after consuming the events for the last maybe 24 hours, okay, I found that there are 15 issues. 2 are critical, 8 are high, 3 are medium, 2 are low. Okay, now my guys have a more systematic approach to tackle the problem. Instead of being overwhelmed by, wow, millions and millions of events coming in, now I just say, okay, let's start my day with looking at 2. Okay, so I can click on 2. Okay, oh, okay, it times out. So you click on 2, then it tell me that, oh, within these 2 particular critical events, okay, why we flag it up as critical is because it has a score of 99 and 95. This is based on our machine learning algorithm. After consuming and prioritization and adding context, that's where we find all these things. Just to explain a little bit, if I'm able to connect to the Active Directory, then I'll be able to see picture of the person, like this screen capture itself, okay? But because my laptop is not that powerful, I cannot spin up my Active Directory, so it doesn't have a picture itself. Okay. If I'm able to connect to the Active Directory, I will be able to pull down the metadata. I will be able to tell you that, hey, who is this guy, which department, what is the phone number, etc., etc. That's the beauty part. Okay. And over here, back to this part, when I do any form of investigation, I can look at it. Okay? Now you see, as a first step, you see, this language is easier to understand for even layman people. Maybe Kenwa can also understand. Okay, what it means by suspicious database commands executed by multiple times by a single user. Okay, why is this user, Tim Cooper, performing multiple database commands on multiple database? Okay, what I can do is I click on it. I can zoom in into one more level, okay, into what is actually happening. So you see over here, once I'm able to connect to the Active Directory, I can pull down additional information if I want. But out of the box, I'm already able to see what is the host name, what is the IP address, what is the source application, and which database is hitting. And these are the events that have been seen happenings for the period of time. So we click into it. So as a first step, if you can see from the screen, what is very refreshing is this part. This is English. It's not SQL language. It's English. Okay? Interactive user. What does it mean by interactive user? That means someone is using an application to connect to the database that performs a logging action. It's not from application or it's not from somewhere else. That means someone is using SQL Studio or Toad to connect to the database and perform an authentication. That's why I call it as interactive. Tim Cooper execute the command of create assembly that is highly suspicious in nature and has never been executed by this user on database in the past. So now I do not need to scratch my head to say, okay, what is this SQL statement about? I need to Google. We now present it in a very simple form for you to understand what is the issue that we are flagging up that probably might need your attention. And further down, okay, we can even tell you what actually influenced the reason why we are rating it as critical is because it has never been executed and it has a significant influence. This is the user. This is the database that we've been seeing. Okay, we tell you that, hey, the command is create assembly, when it happens, application, database user, schema, etc. And the nice part is we tell you the typical user, the behavior. This user has never executed before. And that's the reason why we're telling that, hey, if it never happened, and it happened now, and it happened on 3 different times, probably it needs my attention. What we are saying there. So now this is the refreshing part. With data-rich analytics, coupled with the power of machine learning algorithm, we now give user the ability to have insight into potential risks that are difficult to catch, okay, or flag up as part of database activity monitoring. You can define rules for real-time alerts. We can define rules to capture events. But there could be instances where, due to the overwhelming of events that are coming in, we can't really capture or identify those events itself. So now with data risk analytics, we are just giving customer another emulation to tackle data security problem in an easier way. Remember, as part of our last part of the strategy is to equip your guys with the right tools and ability to data security. It's not to give your guys another tool and be overloaded with events. And the nice part is because it's machine learning, you see, I don't even have a way to define rules. We are not using rules. Rules is good, but can be easily bypassed or can be easily missed out as well. But with machine learning, now we are leveraging the strength of that to identify different rules or different conditions that could be fracking up within your environment. So for example, it could be even case where my users are using application data in a different context, I can also frack it up. So these are things that can be very difficult to frack up when I'm just looking at audit logs itself. Okay, or it could be a case where excessive database records has been seen. Why? So for example, this case, even though it could be low because we are not seeing a lot of event happening, but at least we are fracking up that, hey, this lady is pulling about 1 million records, but his typical behavior is only about thousands, which is not very consistent with what is seen from her. So this is something that we are fracking up to the user as indication that there's a change in behavior that you should be focusing on. So just to elaborate further, a use case where I'm seeing this guy, John Hayden, accessing the database multiple times, okay, over a period of 29 database in a time span of 2 hours and 45 minutes. I mean, humanly, it's kind of like very weird, okay? How does a person normally access 29 database, which is doesn't make sense. Why does he need to do so, okay? And if I were to click on this typical behavior, I'll be able to see that normally he's accessing maybe about 2 or 3 database per day. And that's the reason why we are fracking out these exceptional cases where he's accessing multiple database within a short period of time. Okay, so this is the part that a lot of customers like. Now, instead of focusing or using our database activity monitoring as a console for them to proceed and investigate stuff, what they have done is now they just use the data risk analytics as a starting point to investigate any potential instance or issue that could be surfacing in their environment. Okay, and in terms of architecture, in case there are technical people over here that want to know, oh, how do I actually deploy all these jargons or things in my environment, we make it as simple as possible. Okay, we go via what I call as a 3-tier architecture. Definitely there's a management tier. Very for the simple reason, I need to manage it, I need to deploy policy, etc. And that's where the management console of the database activity monitoring and the data risk analytics reside. In terms of processing and retention is what we call as the gateway cluster. Okay, it's a set of either physical or virtual appliances that you can deploy in your environment to process those data that are ultimately collected by the agent itself. So the agents are the collection points that are deployed within the database itself. It could be, as I mentioned, we support quite a fair bit of databases out of the box. Common one or the predominant one, SQL, MySQL, Oracle, DB2, Informix, okay, Postgres, okay, even down to some of the big data vendors like, for example, MongoDB, even Cloudera, we also support them. So the moment we deploy those agents, those are the ones that will capture the traffic, send it to the gateway, followed by display on the management server. And this is the part where just now I was sharing, the web-based UI is the administrative access to gather all this information and insight. Okay, so to sum it up, okay, these are some of the key takeaways that we recommend customers in terms of managing data security project as a whole. First and foremost, I believe you have kind of catch it. Always start with understanding my posture or my baseline. What are the posture and baseline we're talking about? where are my data, especially sensitive data. Very simple. Once I know where are my sensitive data, then I can answer or even tell the auditor who are accessing those data and what they are doing to it. Okay. If I can't even settle this part, I won't have a complete answer for this part. Okay. I won't have a complete visibility into this area. Once I have this part, and that's where I can make sure that I can stay compliant by having a policy to capture all these activities on a regular basis, okay, on a consistent basis 24/7, so that I know that those data assets are appropriate or right access, okay, and whether there are any mischievous or potential suspicious stuff that I need to pay for certain attention to it, or okay. The other part is, unfortunately, if let's say something really bad has happened, I have all the complete data I need to perform forensic and investigation. Okay, so that in the end, this continuous cycle of continuous visibility, automating risk management, and improving your effectiveness in your environment can be repeated and never becomes a chore or a problem to your staff. Okay, because with data risk analytics, we are helping you to not only to stay secure, okay, but to have the ability to automate and to provide the only relevant context for you in case of any particular issues that are surfacing within your environment. Okay, so with that, I come to the end of my session itself. I'm not sure there are any questions that have been flagged up, but now I pass it back to you, Park. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for your presentation. Maybe Kenghua, is there something you want to add?
No, I will leave the floor open for the participants to ask the questions. Thank you, Pak.
Oke, Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu, kami persilahkan jika ada yang ingin bertanya terkait database security ini, kami persilahkan. Oke, kalau belum ada saya wakili dulu ya, kayaknya masih belum kepikir atau masih malu-malu nih. Oke, Brian, I will maybe I want to ask represent for the customer. For number one is what is the different the solution of Imperva database security different with others, and the second one was the deployment method. Maybe customer want to see where is the placement of the solution Imperva database security. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I'll just use this simple slide to explain.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not going to switch to presentation mode. I'm just going to leave it this way. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so ease of seeing. So in terms of the deployment, it kind of leads to the other part or the first question that you asked. Deployment, as I mentioned, is very straightforward. What we actually need in terms of consideration of deployment is when it comes to deployment sizing, okay, first and foremost, we always ask, what is your database? To be frank, we do support a lot of databases. We even support different flavor. But as with all software, we need to make the assurance to ensure that that particular version, that particular database is supported. Two reasons. It could be a very new database that's been released by the vendor, then we might not be able to support it. We probably might take some time to support it. Second reason, that database could be very old. I have come across cases where customers are using, not trying to laugh at anyone. I know that it's not easy to upgrade database. For example, recently there are some customers that say that, hey, I'm using Oracle 11G. Technically, yes, we do support them. Problem is Oracle will most likely is going to stop supporting that particular version by end of this year. So that's the reason why we need to understand all these things to let the customer know that, hey, if the vendor is not supporting that, our support for that database will become very constrained and limited. So these are just some of the starting point. The other part is we also need to understand how heavy in terms of your database, in terms of usages. Some of the metrics that we probably will ask are things like the CPU that the server that has, etc. So that you kind of can do some form of estimation internally. What is the potential maximum queries that the database could be handling? Okay, and that leads to the database sizing of the gateway cluster. We have different models. So in terms of deployment, we try to make sure the agent is kind of pretty close to the gateway, because agent communicate with the gateway, goes across the wire. If let's say it's across a WAN, then of course we won't recommend it. I mean, then your WAN will most likely be choked up. Okay, so all these technically should be in the same data center. Okay, there shouldn't be a case where your database and my gateway is like one is in Jakarta, one is in Bandung. Then that will be a big problem, because then the bandwidth will be very challenging. So this will be most likely a case where the gateway and your agent and the database are in Jakarta, in Bandung, or in some other places. Okay. Management is also, we try to sit the management as close to the gateway cluster as well. Okay, we try not to also have a case where the management and the gateway is like Bandung and Jakarta, then there will be a problem. So okay, so that is how we set up and deploy the solution. Okay, the agent, the gateway, and the MX. The gateway, we have clustering capabilities such that it can offer redundancy, so that if once, let's say for example, one of the gateway goes down, okay, the other gateway can take over the load and the processing. And as I mentioned, our gateway can be in physical form, it can be also in the virtual form. Our gateway can be in like 2U appliances where you can mount on the server rack, etc. You can also potentially deploy our gateway as a virtual form, but we only support it as on EXX as well as Hyper-V, okay, at this moment. In case you might have database asset that could be in AWS and even Azure, yes, we can also have a way to monitoring those database as well. Okay, but that will be in another form where everything has to be virtualized. Okay, the gateway has to be virtualized, management has to be virtualized. Okay, this is some of the consideration that we need to go into. So what are the differentiating points that we have as compared to other vendors in the market? First and foremost, as I mentioned, we don't require you to enable native auditing. Okay, that is a very important part. Okay, I know that there potentially could be some SIEM vendor that say, hey, just turn on native auditing, send to me, I can do correlation and show you almost the same thing. But native auditing brings quite a fair bit of challenges. Okay, why? In terms of performance challenges on the database, I already mentioned. That's why most DBA kind of like stay away and say that, oh, I'm not going to do that. Okay. The other part, to be very frank, different databases have different ways of turning native auditing. So DBA are also struggling. Okay, you want me to turn on native auditing, yeah, but what do you want me to enable? Okay, it's like a question back and forth to the security guys. It's like, what do you want me to enable? Then the security guys say that you just turn on logging, then I can see. But what do you want me to enable? So it's like a never-ending conversation. Okay, but with us, we remember just now I showed you we have the templates that can enable push-down policy out of the box to help user to seamlessly collect those information relevant to my environment. Okay, this is the easy part. Okay, and the other part is, look at this scale of deployment: management, gateway, and agent. This is one of the most easiest way for you to deploy the solution. There are other vendors that claim to be very easy, but end up, okay, they might say that you need to deploy 1 connector, 2 connector, 3 connector. You might have multiple gateway. You might need more management server to digest, consume. It's way complex, and the time to value to deploy the solution. I have heard of cases where some customer go with another vendor after a year, they never get the project commission because it's just so difficult. Okay, so that is the last thing that a lot of customers want, is that I go down into the project of data security, and after a year, I still can't get anything up and running. But for our case, we try to make it as easy as possible with a 3-tier architecture. so that I can quickly deploy the solution and have fast time to value to start my data security journey. And the last part is, of course, as I mentioned, okay, data risk analytics is something that we only offer and no other vendor actually offer it. Okay, having the ability to gather those information, process through our algorithm, present it in the layman language so that you are able to understand immediately without doing more Googling or scratching your head on what is happening is something that will brings a lot of value to a lot of customers. No one come close to us in terms of offering these data risk analytics capabilities to customers. Well, other than saying that we have something similar, but it's based on like threshold. Everybody knows there's a threshold method to monitoring. If you cross certain threshold, yeah, alert will reflect up. That is not algorithm. That is not machine learning. We are using pure machine learning within the appliance itself to consume and then flag up any anomaly in terms of user behavior to you without defining any threshold. Okay, so these are the few unique points that we have as compared to other vendors in the market that can really offer to customer in terms of data security journey. Keng Hua, did I miss out anything, or you have more to add to what I've mentioned?
Okay, maybe I'll just add. I think a lot of time it depends on your business requirement. If your pain point, for example, is the number of logs that you need to evaluate, look at, then the Imperva solution will definitely help you to take away all this pain point. Right? We do have a customer in Indonesia. They have 1 million logs per day. Imagine you have a huge army looking at the logs, you can find the problem within your database. But if you don't have a huge army that's helping you looking at the logs, then the DRA will be most helpful. Okay. We do have another question. Someone,
Yes, from
Mr.
Pak Budi saja.
Yes.
Pak
Yeah.
Budi.
He asked
Yes,
about the
asking for
license scheme.
license scheme. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, we do have a lot of license scheme. Again, as a team, we always want to present to you the most cost-effective license scheme. So it's quite hard to answer this question. We do have a scheme for data, a scheme for our web application firewall, and we also have a scheme that combines both. And then like what Brian said, we have virtual and we have gateway. Why we have so many license scheme? Because it is to help our customer use the best scheme for their environment or their investment plans. So it really depends on different business requirement and the appetite of the risk appetite of various organization. So maybe this one can be taken separately with MII. Okay.
Okay. Hopefully answer Pak Budi's question. Pak Budi, is still any question? Pak Budi dari Sadana ya kalau saya. Baik, kita masih buka untuk pertanyaan lainnya Bapak Ibu. Mungkin kalau ada yang ingin ditanyakan sebelum nanti kita akan masuk ke sesi quiz. Saya umumkan sebelumnya untuk quiz hari ini, mudah-mudahan nanti Bapak Ibu yang dapat ya. Kita akan cari 3 pemenang, di mana pemenang pertama akan mendapatkan e-voucher senilai 500.000, pemenang kedua 300.000, dan pemenang ketiganya 200.000. Lumayan lah ya. Baik, mungkin ada pertanyaan? Silakan.
Excuse me, can I ask a question, please?
Pak
Sure.
Ramadiansyah, silakan.
Yes. I just want to ask one question about how the data provider, the data security provider, because we overcome this problem, because we know that hacker or people who always steal the data, they always improve their capability to steal our data. Maybe you have already known about this. So how can we overcome this problem? How can the data security provider overcome this problem? Or we have to wait until there is a new case, the data is stolen by the hacker, so we can we can make the solution to protecting our data based on that case, or can the data security provider to anticipate our data security before the hacker steal our data? I think that's the question, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So maybe Keng-Hwa, maybe I'll start first, then probably you can chip in if let's say I miss out anything. So okay, what you say is kind of makes sense. People sometimes like to call it a rat and mouse game. It's like security is like always trying to catch up. That's the reason why we are saying that we shouldn't be reactive. With the approach that I shared just now, the 3-step approach, we are helping you to stay either having the visibility in real time of what is happening rather than reactive, or as you say, maybe after 1 month, 2 months, then I realize, oh my gosh, my data has been stolen. Okay, but instead of that scenario happening, that's the reason why just now the 3-step process that I mentioned, it becomes very important. Okay, because at the fundamental, I need to know where are my data. Okay, you need to know that. Okay, if I do not know where are my risks, where are my problem, I can't even start to even ring fence and start to eyeball the set of problem or those data. Because ultimately, when data got breached or got released out to the out there, it's always about sensitive data that has been disclosed. No one actually release useless data. Okay, they release sensitive data. It could be first name, last name, credit card information. Those are sensitive data, and that's the reason why you need to know where they are so that I can monitor and eyeball really closely. Okay, where are those data, who is touching them, what are they doing to it, okay, so that in the end I can at least know whether there are any suspicious data access. As I mentioned, suspicious data access is always the most difficult part to determine, because user behavior is pretty challenging to know whether is it suspicious or not. I can kind of guesstimate or from the alert that maybe he's doing something weird. And that's the reason why we have data risk analytics to complement that part, to help you to understand that, hey, when a user has deviated from his typical behavior or changed from his typical behavior, I want to be flagged up. I want to know so that I have a way to react to it immediately without having understanding the problem or know the problem 1 month later. So data-based activity monitoring and data risk analytics, that's why we bundle it together and offer it to a customer, not as individual, but as a combined solution. Is we help customer to address 2 parts, the visibility part, as well as having an insight into behavior part, whether someone is accessing those data very differently as compared to previously. So this is a combined solution for you, so that you as a customer has the assurance to know that who is touching my data and whether there's a potential risk of my data that's been leaked out because someone is pulling excessive amount of data from my database. Okay, I even have customer in Singapore, for example, that they say that I want to be notified the moment that someone is pulling now records that is accessing or that is exceeding more than 100 records, because that shouldn't happen in my organization. When someone happen, I want to be notified. Okay, that is how some customers are trying to stay in relevant in terms of understanding what is happening and what are they doing to it. Yeah. Keng-Hwa, did I miss anything? Yeah.
No, I just want to add, Park, that in a recent deal that we closed, the DRA, the data risk analytic, actually help the customer come up with policies on within their organization. So my point is, you need, first of all, a set of policies. But if you do not have, having a solution that is like Imperva, the DRAs, it can help you enhance your database access policies. And therefore, and it's not just manual, it's also automatic. So that's the beauty of that of the solution. And so that customer actually use that to justify to the management why a certain policy has to be put in place, because of that inability to see certain things if the policy is not put in place, despite having a good solution like Imperva. So, policies and the solution must come together. I hope that address your problem. And with that, then you can be more proactive in preventing new, what you call, 0 days into your database. Right? So I hope that answer your question.
Oke, Pak Ramadian, bagaimana? Sudah menjawab pertanyaannya?
Okay, I think it is.
Oke, thank you. Mungkin dari Bapak atau Ibu yang lain, kalau masih ada pertanyaan, kita sekitar 5 menit lagi akan masuk ke sesi quiz. Kalau masih ada pertanyaan, kami persilakan. Atau jika belum ada, nanti bisa by email ke kami melalui account manager yang undang Bapak Ibu di sesi customer webinar ini. Nanti kita bisa jawab di sesi yang terpisah ya, Bapak Ibu. Kalau memang belum ada di sesi ini ya. Oke, kalau memang belum ada, saya pass through ke Susanti untuk sesi kuisnya, silakan. Sebelumnya saya ingatkan Bapak Ibu ya, jangan lupa untuk isi feedback form, karena nanti kalau menang terus feedback formnya lupa, waduh hadiahnya bisa dianulir nih. Jadi tolong diisi feedback formnya supaya dapat sertifikat juga ya, sertifikat attendance ya. Terima kasih. Silakan Susanti.
Untuk Bapak Ibu, untuk kuisnya sudah saya share di kolom chat untuk link joinnya. Kalau ingin join kuisnya bisa langsung join aja, tapi sesuai format yang tertulis, yaitu perusahaan, strip namanya ya Bapak Ibu. Jadi kalau misalnya cuma menuliskan namanya saja, boleh diulang kembali untuk join, karena untuk pemenangnya eligible yang sesuai dengan format ya. Jadi sesuai dengan formatnya yaitu perusahaan, strip namanya, atau namanya strip perusahaan gitu.
Ya, mungkin kasih waktu dulu untuk join.
Iya, ini kita kasih waktu join masih
2 menit mungkin cukup lah.
untuk saya share screen. Apakah sudah terlihat di sana?
Sudah. Ya, yang join baru 29. Kita tunggu sampai hampir semua dulu ya.
Saya ingatkan kembali untuk Bapak Ibu yang mengisi namanya saja bisa diulang kembali sesuai dengan formatnya. Jadi perusahaan, strip namanya gitu. Saat ini udah 49 peserta yang join. Kita tunggu masih 1 menit lagi.
Ya, hari ini lumayan join ya. Ada 79 peserta. Mudah-mudahan salah 3-nya beruntung pagi hari ini. Ya, lumayan dapat voucher untuk bisa buat beli pizza nih ya. Ya, San.
Iya, buat belanja. Sudah 60 orang yang join.
Ya, kita
Masih kita
tunggu.
tunggu di 1
Ya,
menit lagi.
1 menit lagi supaya bisa full ya, San ya.
Iya. Tapi kalau misalnya buat Bapak Ibu yang ternyata kita udah mulai nih, terus dia mau join, tetap bisa join, Pak. Jadi tetap bisa ikut,
Oke.
klik linknya, ntar langsung join langsung ke in-game-nya gitu.
Oke, harusnya sih pertanyaannya kalau menyimak tadi yang Brian sama Kenghua ini bisa sih. Except Brian and Kenghua cannot join because you will win.
No, we are not gonna join. Don't worry. This is interesting. Using quiz.
Yeah.
I usually use Kahoot, so I'm also
Oh, I
watching
see.
this.
Yeah.
Mm,
Am I subscribe for the join my quiz
I see.
because we have everyday enablement for our sales team.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Ya. Oke,
Mau
sudah
70
nambah kan?
orang peserta, Bapak Ibu yang join, boleh kita start sekarang aja?
Ya,
Oke.
10 detik kita hitung ke belakang nih biar bisa disusun. 10,
10,
9, 8, 7, 6,
6.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
Kita
start. We'll see.
mengerjakan.
Kita kasih waktu berapa lama, San?
Mungkin karena soalnya sebetulnya kita kasih waktu 3-4 menit kali ya.
1 soal 1 menit 10 menit sih harusnya. Kelamaan ya.
Aman gitu. Harusnya kalau yang udah menyimak cepet sih, Pak.
Oke, sudah ada tanda-tanda pemenang nih kayaknya.
Pemenang yang sesuai dengan formatnya ya, Pak ya. Perusahaan strip namanya.
Wah iya nih, Mas Sigit nih nggak ada perusahaannya.
Mungkin untuk Bapak sedikit bisa diulang kembali aja untuk join sesuai dengan formatnya.
Udah terlanjur jawab. Gimana nih, San?
Tapi kita sesuai format aja sih Pak, eligibilnya supaya lebih tertata
Boleh.
sama seperti Bapak Ibu yang lain karena sudah sesuai format juga kan.
Keputusan ada di Santi ini soalnya. Saya ingatkan sekali lagi Bapak Ibu ya, jangan lupa diisi feedback formnya, karena nanti kalau feedback formnya belum terisi, bisa dianulir nanti. Sayang kan, sudah jawab benar-benar, nggak taunya salah. Teranulir karena adanya
Selain
feedback form.
dapat hadiah Pak, kalau mengisi feedback form dapat certificate of attendee.
Ya. Oke, kita tunggu 2 menit lagi mungkin ya, San?
Oke. Kita melihat juga kira-kira sudah banyak yang selesai atau belum?
Ya kita tunggulah sampai.
Kurang lebih udah banyak ya Pak yang selesai.
Iya sih, sudah. Ya 3 menit bolehlah, biar sampai selesai. Waduh, Pak Sigit gimana? Masih kita tambah 2 menit lagi tulisan ya, biar selesai semua dulu ya. Udah banyak yang selesai nih. Ada dari Mbak Fani ya, kalau udah Metalindo. Silakan Mbak Fani, raise hand, ada mau ditanyakan? Oh, oke. Ini mungkin sebentar lagi kita close ya, karena sudah waktunya ini. Santi mungkin bisa di close dalam 5 detik.
Ya kita hitung mundur ya Pak untuk
Boleh.
kuisnya. Karena kita
Oke.
sudah lebihin 2 menit dari jam yang tertera tadi. Mungkin kita hitung mundur dari 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Untuk kuisnya kita end sekarang.
Iya.
Karena sesuai dengan format yang tertera, dari nama, strip perusahaan atau perusahaan strip namanya, mohon maaf untuk Bapak Sigit, tidak bisa. Ini jadi
Aduh, sayang
juara
banget Pak
satunya
Sigit.
hitung kedua, duanya ketiga, tiga di posisi 4 ya Pak ya.
Oke,
Ntar kita
boleh direkap bagi Pak siapa nih? Pak Hasan Halim dan Pak Anja Rohma ya. Pak Ibu Rohma
ini
ya.
Bapak atau Ibu?
Oh, Bapak atau
Maksudnya
Ibu ya.
seperti Ibu, Bapak, Ibu Rahma ya.
Iya, Pak
Dari
Agus dari BAF.
James sama
Mohon,
Bapak Agus G dari Busan Auto Finance.
mohon ketiga pemenang ini ngetik di chat Pak ya. Nanti mau vouchernya dalam bentuk OVO atau GoPay atau satu lagi apa ya? Ya antara dua itu Pak, GoPay atau OVO ya. Nanti tolong di chat diketik untuk namanya sama nomor teleponnya Pak. Yang untuk GoPay-nya nanti kita akan langsung masukkan ke dalam akun Bapak atau Ibu ya. Ini Rahma ini Ibu atau Bapak ya? Bu Rahma ya. Oke, Pak Halim udah reply di itu. Oh, Ibu Rahma ya. Ibu Rahma Puji Andri sudah reply juga. OVO. Oke. Pak Agus Gunawan dari BAF. OVO. Pak Agus Gunawan sudah reply ya.
Oke, mungkin untuk datanya bisa Bapak Ibu Bapak Hasan, Ibu Rahma dengan Bapak Agus bisa sambil mengisi feedback form supaya bisa saling dicocokkan untuk datanya supaya nggak salah gitu.
Ya, nanti kita ini ya supaya nggak salah verifikasi ya. Sembari menunggu isi feedback form, Emma and Brian, maybe you want add something? We are still waiting for the customer fill the feedback.
Sure. Well, I want to thank MII for organizing this event, and I hope every participant learned something from us today. We do
Yes.
have a cloud data security, just in case you have you're moving your assets, your data to the cloud. We do have a solutions that deals with only the cloud. Yeah, just for the information.
Okay.
Thanks.
Brian, maybe?
Nothing from my side. Thank you.
Oke. Saya ingatkan kembali lagi Bapak Ibu ya, yang terutama feedback formnya jangan lupa diisi. Santi, ada yang ditambahkan untuk feedback formnya apa sudah masuk semua?
Sebentar. Untuk feedback formnya sudah mengisi 58 peserta.
Berarti
Jadi untuk Bapak
tinggal
Ibu yang belum mengisi, boleh dibantu untuk mengisi feedback form. Karena di situ terdapat Certificate of Attendee dan masukan untuk kami jika webinar ke depannya ingin lebih seperti apa gitu Bapak Ibu.
ya, sembari menunggu sisanya untuk isi feedback form, nanti Bapak Ibu jika pengen diskusi lebih lanjut terkait solusi dari Imperva, baik itu database security maupun cloud security seperti yang dimention oleh Keng Hwa, nanti dapat menghubungi AM yang mengundang Bapak Ibu atau bisa menghubungi saya di sumanto@mii.co.id. Saya chat di chat ya Bapak Ibu, email saya. Jadi nanti kita bisa arrange sesi tersendiri untuk lebih deep dive ya. Kalau siapa tahu mungkin di selama sesi ini masih ada yang pengen ditanyakan kembali. Dan sebelumnya saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu semua yang sudah meluangkan waktu untuk join meeting ini. Terima kasih, thank you for Keng Hwa and Brian also from the Imperva and Juwita from MTech, and also CX team Susanti and Hafiz for helping us to arrange this sessions. Oke, San, sudah isi semua?
Sudah 61 peserta.
61 ya, masih sekitar ya 14-an ya.
Iya.
Okay. For the waiting, Keng Hwa, is there any customer we can share about the solution of your database security in Indonesia?
You mean customer reference?
Yes, correct.
We do have a lot. I mean the few banks, the few big
Yes.
banks that we all know.
Yeah.
The other one, Juwita, is it sensitive to share the other government?
Oh, I see. Government, we can share.
Can share.
Maybe a private sector or.
Maybe we can share the sector lah, Pak.
Okay, you share lah. You share.
Okay.
Ya mungkin untuk customer reference untuk Imperva itu sudah cukup banyak Bapak Ibu dan Mas Santo. Jadi di luar dari top bank Indonesia kita juga punya insurance, finance sector juga ada, untuk dari government juga ada, baik itu BUMN maupun kementerian gitu.
Oke, jadi udah cukup banyak ya solusinya dipakai ya.
Banyak Mas, banyak.
Banyak.
Jadi proven untuk customer Indonesia bisa dibilang cukup proven.
Oke. Oke, mungkin Santi sudah full?
Masih 61 peserta mungkin, tapi kalau udah mau ditutup, acaranya sudah selesai juga nggak apa-apa sih Pak.
Oke.
Untuk Bapak Ibu
Mungkin.
masih bisa tetap mengisi feedback formnya.
Oh, masih bisa ya?
Iya, betul.
Oke, karena mengingat waktu juga yang sudah lumayan beranjak siang, saya close saja sesi ini. Terima kasih sebelumnya kepada Bapak Ibu semua yang sudah join, sudah berpartisipasi di acara customer webinar ini, Imperva, untuk solusi Imperva. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa ketemu lagi di sesi berikutnya. Namun sebelum kami tutup, sekali lagi saya say thank you for Keng Hwa and Brian for your presentation today, and also Juwita from MTech. and CX team also. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa ketemu lagi di sesi berikutnya. Terima kasih semuanya. Selamat siang.
No matter where I go, I'll never leave your side. You will never be alone. Even when we go through changes, even when we're old, remember that I told you I found my way back home. I could never let you go and run away if I tried. 'Cause even when I'm all alone, you got a hold of my mind, and I'll always let you know that I'm always gonna hold on. And I told you right from the start, you just say the word and I go. No, it doesn't matter how far, 'cause your love is all that I know. Baby, you just stay where you are, and you know I won't be too long. Hold on, hold on. Remember when I told you no matter where I go, I'll never leave your side. You will never be alone. Even when we go through changes, even when we're old, remember that I told you I found my way back home.
Can you hear me?
조용히 잠든 방을 열어 기억을 꺼내들어 써준 시간 위에서 한 명의 너는 떠올라 긴 맘속에 널 가둔 채 살아 그만 멈춘 시간 속 잠든 너를 찾아가 아무리 막아도 결국 너의 곁인 걸 결국엔 여행을 끝냈네 이젠 돌아가 너라는 집으로 지금 다시 way back home 세상을 뒤집어 찾으려 해 오직 너로 완결된 이야기를 No, I won't 연결된 이야기를 No, I won't never lose As long as you're there 빛이 다 꺼진 여기 나를 안아줘 눈을 감으면 소리 없이 밀려와 이 마음 그 위로 넌 또 한겹 쌓여가 Even when we go through changes Even when we're old Remember that I told you I found my way back home